Hello students, let's read the problem. And it says, what is the range of the function f of x equals negative 2x plus 1 when the domain is negative 5 is less than or equal to x less than 3? So what I'm looking for is range, okay? And range has to do with y values, okay? Make sure that we keep that in mind because it's very important that we remember that range has to do with y values, okay? And of course, they're giving me a function, and then it says when that domain, so they're giving us a domain that they want for us to consider, okay? And that domain is going to be between negative 5 and a positive 3. So what does that mean? It means that if I was to graph my function, okay, graph it, on the grid, I will look at the left side. The further number will be a negative 5 on x, and the further number on the right will be a positive 3. And that's it, only that interval, okay? So we'll come back and we're going to graph it, and hopefully that will make more sense. Another thing that I need for you to look, it's the inequality symbols that are in my domain, okay? Because those symbols are very important when it comes to graphing it and deciding which inequality am I going to choose for my final answer. So the less than or equal should remind us of a circle that is shaded. The inequality that says less than should remind us of just an empty or non-shaded circle, okay? And we'll come back to that later on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate f of x, which is given to me as negative 2x plus 1. And I'm going to evaluate, and evaluate basically means work it out, okay? So I'm going to replace x with a negative 5. So where the x is, notice how I left like a blank space? I need a negative 5 in there. So f of negative 5, it's equals to, if I work it out, I get a positive 11. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means that when x is negative 5, the y value is a positive 11. So if I was to graph that point, since I'm going to come back to my circles that are shaded and unshaded, that point would be a circle that is shaded. Okay? And remember, shaded means less than or equals or greater than or equals to. Okay? It could be either one of those two symbols. So we're done with the first one. Now we need to evaluate my second domain value. And of course, the function is the same. But now I'm going to replace x with a positive 3. So I'm going to replace x with a positive 3. So right there in the parentheses, I write down a 3. So I said f of 3 equals to, if we work it out, negative 2 times a positive 3 plus a 1, I get a negative 5. So what order pair is that? Well, it means that when x is 3, the y value is at negative 5. Okay? And remember that if we go back to the circles that are shaded or non-shaded, then this point should have a circle that is non-shaded, which means any of these two inequalities can work for that. Okay? Now, I am going to look and I'm going to consider only these two values. Why? Because those values are not my x, but my y values. Okay? And remember that range has to do with the y values. Okay? So I don't know if that's enough information for you to determine which one is my answer choices. But if you analyze, for example, 11. Let's look at 11. So 11 has that circle that is shaded. Therefore, 11 can only go with either one of these two symbols, right? So look at the answer choices. So for sure, I can cross out C because it doesn't even have an 11. And A and B do have an 11, right? So, but notice how A has an 11 with a symbol that doesn't have the equal on the inequality. So that cannot be my answer, right? If you look at letter B, let's look at letter B. Letter B has an 11, and it also has the inequality that has the equal sign on the bottom, which means this symbol that I'm shading right now. You see that? Okay, what about negative 5? Well, negative 5, I see it here, and it has the inequality that doesn't have the equal on the bottom. So that's good, because that's one of my choices for me, right? So it seems to us that the answer should be letter B. Is that right? But I'm going to take it one more step, okay? And what I want to do is I actually want you to graph it. I want you to see how the range works in my graph, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to graph only those 2 points, okay? So the first point is negative 5 and 11, which negative 5 is here because it's right after the negative 4. And 11 is not in my grid, but I can tell that it will be just above the 10. So I'm going to write down an 11 right there. Okay, so I'm going to go up on negative 5, and this point needs to be shaded. Now remember, why am I shading this one? Because that's my inequality that I'm using for the 11. Okay, the second point is going to be positive 3, which is right here, and negative 5, which is right, negative 5 is here. So this point, it's not going to be shaded. Okay, so we're going to connect those points with a line. So let me give you a couple of seconds for you to do that, and I'll do the same myself. Okay, so remember we're looking at the range only, which is my y-axis, right? So if I want to build a fence, remember, if I want to build a fence, I will need to actually touch the y-axis. So I can build a fence on the highest point that is given to me. And I know it looks like a very thick fence, but that's okay. We're looking at the numbers though, right? And on the bottom, this will be my fence right here. You see that? So my fence is enclosing the highest point and the lowest point that I'm using. And we're going to circle those points just so that we can see them more clearly. So the highest point, it's a positive 11, which is my positive 11 right here. You see that? On the lowest point, what was the lowest point that I reached? Negative 5, which is the number that is right here. Is that making connection now? Awesome. So now I'm looking at the range, which is the y value. So if I was to draw a line, I'm going to touch, of course, only my y-axis, which is right here. And I'm going to look at those points that are there. What are the numbers? Well, the highest was a positive 11, but then all the numbers are less than 11. Do you see that? But it's also equals to 11 because I'm choosing that dark circle. So this is the range, guys, right here. So let's go ahead and write down the word range. So range, it's all the numbers that are equal, less than or equals to 11, but they do not go further down negative 5. They are above negative 5, right? So that's another thing that can help us make the connection in the answer that we're going to look. So we're going to write down the statement of the comparison of the range and the 11. Okay, so we said range is less than or equals to 11, but we also said that range is actually greater than negative 5, right? So what I want to do next is I want to write down the inequality here. Okay, so we said range is y, right? So we're going to say range is less than or equals to 11, right? Okay, and the second one says range is greater. So greater means that it gets 2 cookies, right? It's greater than negative 5. But I can also rewrite it like this. And let me see if you don't get confused. The range, the y, it still gets 2 cookies. So even though it looks like I swapped the symbols, the meaning is still the same. And the reason why I did that is because I want you now to compare The second one, this one here, with the actual first part of the answer choices, right? Okay? So now we can completely make a decision that yes, B is the actual answer for that. Okay, so we took it a little bit further step to graph it, but I think that's a great way for you guys to see how the fence is actually built on the y-axis and on the y on the bottom. Okay, so hopefully this helped you. And of course, we said D was not the answer, right?